I walked into the law office with a heavy heart, expecting nothing more than a cold procedural reading of my father's will. I wasn't here for wealth. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here because, despite everything, I still respected the man who raised me. And then Ryan laughed. Loud, arrogant, cruel. He leaned back in his chair, the Rolex on his wrist catching the light, his tailored suit pressed to perfection, both things he had never been able to afford before. He smirked and said, "I already took the money, Liv, spent every damn cent. You get nothing. Good luck." My breath stilled in my chest, not out of shock. Oh no, I had long suspected that something was off, but because of the sheer audacity of it, the way he grinned like a man who thought he had won the game before it even started. Ryan Mitchell, my cousin, my father's so-called favorite nephew, the golden boy who was always one step ahead, always charming, always manipulating. I kept my face impassive, but inside something twisted, an old wound, a bitter understanding that this had been his plan all along. Of course he had taken the money, of course he had spent it. That was Ryan. Selfish, reckless, and most of all, short-sighted. I glanced at Mr. Harrison, my father's attorney, a man who had handled our family's affairs for decades. He didn't react to Ryan's gloating. In fact, if I hadn't known any better, I would have sworn there was amusement flickering behind his professional mask. Then, without a word, he reached into his leather briefcase, pulled out a thick folder, and slid it across the polished oak table toward Ryan. "I think you should read this first," Mr. Harrison said, his voice calm, measured, almost entertained. Ryan's smirk faltered. He hesitated, just for a second, before snatching up the folder and flipping it open. His confidence, so smug just moments ago, evaporated. His eyes skimmed the first page, then the second. His face paled, his hands, which had been so steady and sure when flaunting his ill-gotten wealth, began to tremble, and just like that, I knew. He had no idea what was coming for him. My name is Olivia Carter, and up until today, I thought I had come to terms with the way my father treated me. William Carter was a complicated man, brilliant but distant, calculated but ruthless, the kind of man who built an empire from nothing, whose name carried weight in every boardroom he walked into. But as a father, he was someone I had spent years trying to understand. When I was a kid, I idolized him. When I was a teenager, I resented him. And by the time I was an adult, I had accepted that I would never truly know him, not in the way a daughter should. So when he died, I didn't expect anything from his will. I didn't expect money, I didn't expect apologies, and I sure as hell didn't expect some sentimental letter revealing all the things he never had the courage to say in person. I came today out of duty, out of respect. But Ryan, he came for one reason only, to gloat. I watched Ryan's expression shift from cocky amusement to disbelief, then something far closer to horror. "What the hell is this?" His voice, once filled with arrogant confidence, was suddenly tight, almost desperate. He kept flipping through the pages like the words might change if he looked at them fast enough. I leaned back, crossing my arms over my chest. "Something wrong, Ryan?" His head snapped up, eyes burning with something between rage and panic. "This is a joke, a goddamn joke." But Mr. Harrison remained unbothered, straightening his glasses as he spoke. "No joke, Mr. Mitchell. What you're holding is a legal document confirming that the money you received 6 months ago was not, in fact, your rightful inheritance." A beat of silence. Then Ryan laughed again. But this time it wasn't cocky. It was forced, strained. "Bullshit," his voice wavered. "The trust fund, Dad told me—" "Was a test," Mr. Harrison interrupted smoothly. "A very specific, very deliberate test, one designed to expose exactly the kind of man you are." Ryan's face drained of color. My heart pounded. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, my throat, the base of my skull. I knew my father was ruthless, but this was a masterpiece. Ryan thought he had won because 6 months ago he convinced my father to release a portion of his inheritance early. He probably sweet talked his way through meetings, fed him some sob story about needing money for a business investment or whatever lie he had chosen that week, and somehow he got it. Or at least he thought he did. What he actually got was bait, a dummy trust fund, a carefully crafted illusion tied to one crucial condition buried deep in the fine print, one Ryan had clearly never bothered to read. If he took the money early, he forfeited his right to the actual inheritance. And Ryan, arrogant, greedy, impulsive Ryan, walked right into the trap. I watched it happen in real time, the exact moment he realized he was fucked. Ryan's breath turned shallow. His hands tightened around the pages of the document, crumpling the corner. No, no, no. This is bullshit. I spent that money. I bought property, cars, I invested it. Then I hope you enjoyed it, Mr. Harrison said mildly, flipping another page. Because as of today, all remaining assets linked to that trust are frozen, pending liquidation. Ryan shot up from his chair, slamming his hands on the table. You can't do this. Actually, I said, tilting my head, we can. And we just did. Ryan turned to me then, eyes wild, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, and in that moment, something unexpected happened. I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being blindsided. Ryan was, and he was about to lose everything. I always knew Ryan was a snake, but I never thought he'd be stupid enough to bite the hand that fed him. For years, I watched him slither his way through life, charming, manipulating, always managing to land on his feet no matter how many people he stepped on. My father saw him as the golden nephew, the one who could do no wrong. I saw him for what he really was, a parasite. So, when I found out 6 months ago that Ryan had convinced my father to release part of his inheritance early, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I got to work. I remember exactly where I was when the first crack in Ryan's facade appeared. It was a Friday evening. I had just gotten home from work, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of wine when my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the bank. At first, I thought it was just another generic update. But when I glanced at the subject line, my stomach dropped. Account activity alert. Carter Family Trust. I frowned, clicking it open. The message was brief, formal, one of those automated notifications meant to ensure transparency in high-value transactions. It listed a withdrawal. A sum so ridiculous it made my head spin. I felt my grip tighten around the stem of my wine glass. There was only one person who could have touched that money. Ryan. I needed proof, so I called the bank. At first, the customer service rep was reluctant to give me details. I wasn't technically the account holder. But the moment I dropped William Carter's name and mentioned that I was one of the beneficiaries, their tone shifted. Just a moment, Miss Carter. Let me pull up the details. The line went silent for a few seconds, then, yes, I see a significant transaction from 6 months ago. The funds were transferred to... A pause. Then carefully, Mr. Ryan Mitchell's personal account. Bing. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, my pulse steady. So it was true. Ryan had somehow convinced my father to grant him access to a portion of the inheritance early. And knowing Ryan, that money was already gone. I forced myself to take a slow breath. Getting angry wouldn't help me. Not yet. I needed more. For the next few weeks, I became obsessed. Every free moment I had, I spent digging into Ryan's finances. I scoured social media, combed through property records, even hired a private investigator to check his recent purchases, and sure enough, the pieces started falling into place. New condo in downtown LA, paid in full, luxury car dealership purchase, one fully loaded sports car, multiple flights booked first class, New York, Vegas, Miami, wire transfers to shady-looking accounts, offshore, untraceable. He wasn't just spending money, he was laundering it. I didn't go straight to the lawyers, not yet. Instead, I did something riskier. I went to see my father. It wasn't easy. He and I had been on uneasy terms for years. I wasn't the daughter he wanted. I was the daughter who asked too many questions, who didn't fall in line like Ryan did. But when I sat across from him in his study that evening, I could tell he already knew something was wrong. I took a deep breath and pushed the bank statement across the desk. "Ryan's stealing from you." He didn't react at first. He just stared at the document, his fingers drumming lightly on the mahogany wood. "I know," he said, finally. His voice was even, unreadable. I blinked. "Wait, what? You know?" He let out a slow breath, picking up the document and scanning it as if seeing it for the first time. But I could tell he had already known this. He had suspected it long before I did. That's when he looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I wanted to see how far he would go," he admitted, "and now I think it's time we teach him a lesson." Over the next few weeks, my father and I worked in secret. We restructured the real trusts, moved assets into different legal holdings, and most importantly, we set a condition. The money Ryan took wasn't part of his real inheritance. It was a dummy fund, a legal decoy with one very specific clause. Anyone who withdrew from it before my father's passing would forfeit their right to the actual estate. Ryan thought he was getting ahead of the game. In reality, he was playing himself. A month before my father passed, he called me into his study one last time. His health was failing, his voice was weaker than usual, but his mind still razor sharp. He handed me an envelope. "This is the last thing I need you to do." I opened it. Inside was a sealed legal document. "The moment Ryan tries to claim his inheritance," he continued, "I want you to be the one to show him this." I swallowed. "What is it?" My father gave me a small, knowing smile. "Proof." That was the last real conversation we had. 2 weeks later, he was gone. And now, 6 months later, I sat across from Ryan at the lawyer's office, watching his world fall apart. I had spent months preparing for this moment. I had watched, waited, let him believe he had won. But the second he opened that folder, the one Mr. Harrison had just slid across the table, I saw it. The exact moment his life unraveled, his confidence shattered, his empire of lies collapsed, his voice shook. This isn't real." I just tilted my head, enjoying the rare sight of Ryan Mitchell speechless. "Oh, it's real," I said, "and trust me, this is only the beginning." For a moment, Ryan just stared at the documents, his fingers curled around the edges like he wanted to rip them apart, as if destroying the papers in his hands would somehow erase the reality they contained. And then he laughed. Not the nervous kind, not the kind that betrays fear. No, it was the kind of laugh that was meant to mock, to dismiss. He tossed the folder back onto the table like it was nothing more than a meaningless pile of paper and leaned back in his chair, flashing me that same smug, overconfident grin he had worn all his life. "You actually think this is going to change anything?" I didn't answer, I just watched. Because I knew Ryan better than he knew himself. Ryan shook his head, exhaling sharply like this was all one big inconvenience for him. "Olivia, sweetheart," he drawled as if he was talking to a child who didn't understand the rules of the world. "You can have your little gotcha moment, but let's be real. You and I both know lawyers will eat this alive. This," he gestured toward the documents like they were a piece of cheap fiction, "this is nothing." Mr. Harrison, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. "I wouldn't be so sure of that, Mr. Mitchell." Ryan turned his gaze toward the lawyer, his smirk widening. "Oh, come on, Harrison. You've been handling my uncle's affairs for decades. You know as well as I do that money has a way of smoothing things over." Ah, there it was. Ryan's favorite weapon, money. I could see it now, the way his mind was working. In his head, this was just another bump in the road, a minor setback. He'd talk his way out of it, maybe throw some money at the right people, make a few phone calls, and this whole thing would go away. Because that's how it had always worked for him, except this time, there was no more money. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, meeting his gaze head on. "You really don't get it, do you?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "What's there to get, Liv? You think you won because you found some loophole in a trust fund? Newsflash, I've already spent the money. There's nothing left to take." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, flipping open another folder. Actually, Mr. Mitchell, that's not entirely true. Ryan frowned. I caught it, the slightest shift in his expression. It was small, but it was there. The first crack, the first sign that he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. Mr. Harrison slid another document across the table. That, he said, is a court order freezing all remaining assets tied to the misappropriated trust. Ryan blinked. What? Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. It means that everything you've purchased with that money, your cars, your condo, your accounts, has been flagged for liquidation. Any remaining funds will be recovered and returned to the estate. Ryan's fingers twitched. You can't do that. His voice was tight, the arrogance beginning to slip. Mr. Harrison gave a polite, lawyerly smile. Oh, but we already have. Ryan let out a short, sharp breath through his nose. Fine, he said, shrugging it off. So you take the house. So what? I'll get another one. I tilted my head. With what money? His jaw clenched. I have other accounts. Mr. Harrison tapped the folder. Not anymore. We tracked all transactions linked to the stolen funds. Offshore transfers, secondary investments, unreported earnings. Everything is now under financial review. Ryan's face drained of color. There it is, that moment. The exact second he realized he wasn't walking away from this one, his confidence shattered. The smirk was gone, the bravado fading fast. And for the first time since this entire mess began, I saw fear, real, genuine, cold fear. His mind was racing, I could see it in his eyes. He was calculating, scrambling, trying to figure out a way out of this, and then he made a fatal mistake. His lips curled back into something that was supposed to be a smirk, but looked more like a grimace. You think I'm just going to roll over and take this? His voice was lower now, almost dangerous. You think I don't have options? A quiet beat passed. Then Mr. Harrison let out a small breath. Ah! He closed his folder, folding his hands neatly over it. Threats. That's always the last move of a desperate man. Ryan pushed back from the table, pacing now. His hands raked through his hair, his breathing uneven. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. He stopped, turning toward me with pure hatred in his eyes. Forgery, loan applications under my father's name, years of stolen money, and Ryan's name was all over it. I looked up. Ryan wasn't breathing. He wasn't even blinking. His entire body had gone rigid, like his brain had just short-circuited, trying to process what was in front of him. This is fake. His voice barely came out. This isn't real. No, Ryan, I said, closing the folder. You are. A long, heavy silence filled the room, and then Ryan bolted. He didn't say another word. He just grabbed his phone, his keys, and ran. Ran like a man who had just realized the walls were caving in. I watched him go, a slow smile creeping across my face. Because it didn't matter where he ran, he had nowhere left to hide, and he knew it. Ryan ran, not out of the office, not out of the fight, but out of options. The moment his chair scraped against the polished floor and he bolted for the door, I knew. He had nowhere left to go, but like a cornered animal, he would fight tooth and nail before he admitted defeat. That was Ryan's nature. Not to win, but to survive, no matter the cost. Too bad for him. This time, survival wasn't an option. The office door slammed shut behind him, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Mr. Harrison exhaled through his nose, unbothered. He had seen men like Ryan before, cocky, entitled, delusional. They always believed they could bend reality to their will, until reality hit them like a freight train. I let out a slow breath, pushing the folder back toward Mr. Harrison. So, what happens now? He glanced at his watch. Now? The fun begins. The first domino tipped over that very night. 7:45 p.m., Ryan tries to withdraw cash. He must have driven straight to his bank after leaving the office, still thinking there was a way to salvage this. He swiped his card at the ATM, declined, tried again, declined. Then he pulled out his phone, called the bank, demanded to know what the hell was going on. The customer service rep's voice was calm, polite, utterly indifferent. Sorry, sir, but your accounts have been temporarily frozen due to an ongoing fraud investigation. Silence. Then, click. 8:22 p.m., Ryan discovers the condo isn't his anymore. Still in denial, still clinging to the idea that money could fix this, Ryan drove to the sleek downtown condo he had purchased with the stolen funds. He made it as far as the lobby before security stopped him. "Sir, your name is no longer on the property records. The building is under legal review." Ryan lost it, screaming, threats, the usual display of powerless rage that happens when a man who has always been in control suddenly finds himself drowning. 10:15 p.m., Ryan's car is repossessed as if the universe wanted to rub salt in the wound. A tow truck arrived in front of the building just as Ryan was storming out, the sleek sports car, the one he had paraded around like a trophy, the one that was meant to prove to the world that he had made it, was hooked up and hauled away. Ryan stood on the curb watching his entire life get taken from him. And I watched it all unfold. By the time midnight rolled around, I knew he would come to me, and I was ready. I sat in my apartment, sipping a glass of wine, waiting. The city skyline flickered beyond my window, but my focus was on the inevitable confrontation. Ryan wouldn't go down quietly. He would beg first. Then he would threaten. Then finally, when he realized he had nothing left, he would break. At exactly 12:37 a.m., my front door rattled. A knock. Too forceful to be casual, too hesitant to be confident. I smirked, right on time. I opened the door to find a ghost of the man I had seen earlier that day. Ryan looked wrecked. His perfectly styled hair was a mess. His shirt was wrinkled, unbuttoned at the collar. There was a wildness in his eyes, one I had never seen before. I let the silence stretch between us, let him squirm. Then, finally, he caved. "Olivia," his voice was hoarse, desperate. "We need to talk." I took a slow sip of my wine before answering. "Oh, about what?" His jaw clenched. "You know damn well what." He tried everything. At first, he tried to play nice. "Liv, come on, we're family." I raised a brow. "Are we?" He swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "You don't have to do this. Whatever you're getting out of this, I can make it worth your while." When that didn't work, he tried to rewrite the narrative. "Dad manipulated you, Olivia. He used you to get back at me." I let out a low laugh. "Oh, Ryan, you did this to yourself." And when the desperation finally cracked into rage, he dropped the act. "You think this is over? You think I don't have people who can make this go away?" I tilted my head. "Funny. That's exactly what Dad said you'd say." Ryan's breathing was erratic now. He knew this was the end. But there was one last nail for his coffin. I reached onto the coffee table, picked up the last folder, and handed it to him. His arrest warrant. His hands shook as he opened it, his face drained of color. I didn't need to say a word because at that moment, Ryan finally understood. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about losing his fortune. This was prison. This was the rest of his life. Gone. He staggered back, gripping the folder like it was a lifeline. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And I finished my wine. The knock at the door came at exactly 1 a.m. Police. Ryan didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then he turned to run. Too late. The second he reached the hallway, officers swarmed him. Handcuffs clicked, Ryan screamed, fought, cursed, but it didn't matter, because for the first time in his life, he had no way out. As they dragged him away, he locked eyes with me one last time. Hate, desperation, fear. I smiled. Checkmate. Ryan was still screaming when the police threw him into the back of the cruiser. I stood there watching as he thrashed against the handcuffs, barking threats that meant absolutely nothing anymore. "You think this is over, Olivia? You think I don't have people?" I tilted my head, amused. "Ryan," I said, loud enough for him to hear through the roll-down window, "you don't even have a bank account anymore." For a second, just a split second, I saw it. The moment he realized this wasn't a setback, this was the end. The trial wasn't long or dramatic. Ryan's crimes were obvious. Documented, meticulously detailed by forensic accountants and legal experts my father had lined up long before his death. Fraudulent loans taken out in my father's name, forgery of legal documents to gain early access to a fake trust fund, money laundering through offshore accounts, none of which were as offshore as he thought. He sat there in the courtroom day after day, watching the prosecution dismantle him piece by piece. The confidence was gone, the arrogance evaporated. He didn't look at me once, not when they played the recorded phone calls proving he had orchestrated this for years, not when his high-priced lawyer gave up halfway through the trial, realizing this case was unwinnable, not even when the judge read out the verdict, guilty, on all counts. Ryan expected a slap on the wrist, maybe a few fines, probation at worst. After all, he wasn't some low-level scammer. He was Ryan Mitchell, a man who had always found a way out. Not this time. Sentence: 35 years. No parole, all remaining assets seized. When the judge delivered the final sentence, Ryan's mouth actually fell open. He turned to his lawyer, as if expecting a last-minute miracle. Nothing came. I watched him slump back in his chair, pale and shaking. That was the moment. That was when he truly understood. I thought that was the end of it, that I had seen the last of Ryan. But 6 months after he was locked up, I got a letter from him. At first, I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. I opened it. His handwriting was messier than I remembered. Rushed. Angry. The letter was short. "You think this is over? You took everything from me, but I still have people, and I still have time." No signature, just those words, dripping with venom. I folded the paper carefully, placing it back in the envelope. Then I laughed. Because Ryan still didn't get it, still thought he had power, still believed he had a way out. He had nothing, and I was about to make sure he never did again. Ryan wanted war. I had one last battle to fight. I sued him for damages, emotional distress, fraud recovery, civil penalties. Every last cent he had left, mine. I froze his remaining assets, his last emergency funds seized, his investments liquidated. I made sure that even in prison, he paid. See, most inmates earn small wages doing prison labor. Ryan had planned to use those wages to survive, maybe buy favors, maybe have some control left. I made sure he didn't. Every penny he made in that cell legally transferred to me. So for the next 35 years, every dollar he earned would be mine. Even behind bars, he was still working for me, still paying for what he did. And he knew it. 1 month after his final failed appeal, I sent him a letter of my own. It was short, simple. "Now you work for me. Enjoy the next 35 years. No threats, no insults, just the truth. I never got a reply, but I like to imagine him sitting in his cell reading those words over and over again, knowing that he had lost, knowing that I had won, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Ryan Mitchell was a man who lived for control. He spent his life manipulating, cheating, stealing, always a step ahead, always untouchable, but in the end, he wasn't untouchable. He wasn't even memorable. The world moved on without him. The people who once sang his praises, they forgot him. And me, I thrived. I built a life that was truly mine, and I never looked back. Was I too ruthless? Did Ryan deserve everything he got? Or do you think people like him ever truly change? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you ever find yourself facing a Ryan Mitchell of your own, remember this: winning isn't about being the bigger person. Sometimes it's about making sure they never get up again. The end.